African Americans and Hispanic workers and veterans, and workers without high school diplomas.
They have chosen not to disclose Barrow's gender.
We don't know it yet. But the president's son, Hunter Biden, was indicted by a federal grand jury.
Racist Joe strikes again. Kamala Harris actually is a communist, apparently. Some weird parents raising some terribly disadvantaged children. Oh, and Hunter Biden got indicted. What a day. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now. Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker that is completely and utterly cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. On today, it is Friday, September 15th, the year of our Lord 2023. Lots to catch you up on. Joe Biden shows his racist card once again in a hilarious clip that I couldn't pass up. And also, Hunter Biden got indicted. Spoiler alert, I don't care. But you know what? Let's get to Joe first, and then we'll go to Hunter. Then we'll go to Kamala, because they all made some fantastic news yesterday. But I wanted to get to this. OMG, racist Joe strikes again. Yesterday, at something that he was talking at, Joe said, you can't remember when he said, well, poor kids are just as smart as white kids, implying that, do you think that poor people who, in his mind, the way he constantly talks about it, are minorities, and you think that we need to defend the fact that minorities are just as smart as white kids? Yeah, that doesn't square with your side of the aisle, Joe. But anyways, yesterday he said something similar, and I wanted to play that clip for you now. And then after that, we have a clip from CNN that it is not entirely related, but it's fascinating that they're talking about this stuff on CNN. Anyways, watch this clip of Joe Biden again being racist, in my opinion. No, it's just flat out racism. Watch this from Grandpa Joe. Check it out.
We not only recovered all the jobs we lost during the pandemic, we've added millions more. We've seen record lows in unemployment, particularly, and I've focused on this my whole career, particularly for African Americans and Hispanic workers and veterans. The workers without high school diplomas, the lowest unemployment rate in 70 years for women now.
I don't think he knows. And that's why it's funny to me. Blacks and Hispanics, the people who don't have high school diplomas. He also threw in veterans there, which I don't know, man. Just the way he says stuff and the way he talks. It's funny, and it's also scary at the same time. Funny and scary. Fairy. Maybe that's the term that we'll use to describe Joe Biden nowadays. But yeah, that's, again, not a cool thing to say, but because it's coming from a confused grandpa who just so happens to be running the country, it is kind of funny. But this I thought was actually more interesting than that. This is from CNN. We all know CNN to not be necessarily one of the arbiters of truth in American society. But even they decided to take shots at Joe Biden on a thing that we talked about pretty much throughout the entire week. Again, yesterday we talked about what he said on Monday, which was 9/11, that he was there. He continues to be lying all the time, and people in the White House press briefing room are asking his spokespeople, hey, what's the deal with this? But interestingly enough, they are actually covering it on CNN, which is crazy. I want to play you just a brief clip of that before we get on to Hunter Biden being indicted. But this is fascinating that it's going outwards. I'm cynical about this, but I'll explain that after this. We won't watch this whole thing, but check it out.
And he has done, I don't know if it's similar things, but he's sort of told some stories that don't line up quite like this before.
Yeah, this president has a pattern at this point of either inventing or embellishing stories about his own past, his biography. He did it 3 times in one speech last month alone. He claimed he had witnessed a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh when he actually showed up about 6 hours later. He claimed that his grandfather had died just days before he was born himself at the same hospital. In fact, his grandpa died more than a year before in a different state, not the same hospital. And he also repeated a favorite false story that I and others have debunked over and over again about a supposed conversation with an Amtrak train conductor he was friends with, who was actually deceased at the time the conversation would have had to take place. And that's not all. There are some more serious ones, in my view. Previously in his presidency, he claimed at one point he'd been arrested during a civil rights protest, when in other versions of the story he just said an officer had taken him home from a protest. He said he had visited the Pittsburgh synagogue where worshippers were killed in a 2018 mass shooting. In fact, he had actually spoken to the rabbi, but never went. And he's made a whole bunch of others too. He said at one point, Republicans like to bring this up, he said that he used to drive a tractor trailer, he used to drive an 18-wheeler. Never happened. The White House later clarified he used to drive a school bus at one point as a job briefly. School bus, of course, not an 18-wheeler. So whatever his intentions, whether it's foggy memory about stuff that's going on decades ago or deliberate embellishment, this is an unfortunate pattern that keeps coming up again and again with Joe Biden.
Wow, we actually ended up making it through that whole thing because I wanted to. But the holy cow goes on CNN. Now, there's also some other more important stuff that they didn't necessarily get to. Remember when he was on that town hall with Anderson Cooper and said, disclosed his own foreign policy when it comes to Taiwan and China? And Anderson Cooper said, will we come to Taiwan's defense? And he said, absolutely, which is not the United States policy position. I think he just wanted to make the people clap in the audience, and everyone was confused. But again, this is not the first time that Joe Biden has been caught doing this. And when this guy on CNN, interestingly enough, and by the way, if you're excited that CNN is covering this, I'm going to ruin it in just a second. But when this guy says, well, is it a foggy memory or is it deliberate embellishment? I'm going to go with the latter. Remember the first time Joe Biden ran for president? It was like the 80s. He had plagiarized some dude's speech consistently and over again. He also claimed that he was like top of his class at his law school, which he was not. He was towards the bottom of his class. And that was such a big deal back then that he had to drop out of the race. Again, this is probably almost 40 years ago now, 30 years ago maybe. But that's been a thing that he's been doing for the longest time. I've explained my point of view. I think Joe Biden is stuck in a world where we don't have immediate access to things that he just said. In other words, in the early 90s, you couldn't go to YouTube and check, did Joe Biden say this? No, you saw it on the evening news or you didn't, and there was no way to verify whether or not he was making accurate statements. But nowadays, we have all of that capability, and Joe Biden is stuck in the past and stuck in the old ways of embellishing and just flat out lying about things and hasn't caught up to the times. That, I guess, is the generous component of it. Now, here's the CNN angle. A lot of people, I think, in the comment section will probably say, yes, finally, CNN is covering this, or MSNBC is covering this, or any of the broadcast networks are finally covering Joe Biden just flat out lying about things. Here's where I get super unbelievably cynical. I think a lot of those cable news channels, and especially broadcast media, in a lot of ways are a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party. And because the polling would show that most Democrats, most Americans obviously, but most Democrats think that Joe Biden, the sitting Democrat president of the United States, most Democrats think he's too old to run. Because that polling is definitively clear, and it shows Joe Biden not only losing to the generic Republican, but also losing to all of the actual Republicans in the race, including Donald Trump in all of the latest polling. I think what's happening is the mouthpiece for the DNC, the cable news channels that espouse their opinions so fervently, are saying, hey, what can we do to get this guy out of here? I think that's what's happening. I don't think that they've turned a corner of truth and are now saying, yes, we now finally are understanding what's happening. I think, cynically, they're going, all right, how do we get this guy out of the way? What do we have to do? Let's take him down internally so that we can get our next person in there, probably Gavin Newsom. and get things done that way. That's what I think is actually happening. So to say that I'm excited that CNN is covering this is kind of, but also I think there's a deeper reason as to why they're doing it. They want somebody like Kamala Harris to run the country. And speaking of Kamala Harris, I've always thought Kamala Harris is just unqualified for the jobs that she has consistently taken. When she was the Attorney General of California, probably unqualified, probably got her way in there in an interesting way. That's what I'll say about that. And then she moved to be a senator of California, and now she's the vice president of the United States, has maneuvered herself in such fashion, creatively, we'll say. But now that she's being taken seriously as one of the presidential candidates when Joe Biden doesn't, in fact, run this next cycle, people are starting to scrutinize what she actually says more. We make fun of her public appearance faux pas, her repetitive way of speaking, her awful syntax that doesn't make any sense to anybody, and then her head nods of like, yeah, it just drops some truth on you, when everyone in the crowd is like, what in the world are you talking about? But now that we're paying attention more to what Kamala Harris says, I wanted to pull this clip. Is Kamala Harris actually a communist? I would say, judging by this clip that you're about to see, yes, she is. That's why this is labeled Commie la Harris. And I hate to be, I don't think, at least I try not to be, like a bomb chucker and say things that are absolutely crazy with kind of no backing it up. So I don't want to call all Democrats communists. I'm not that type of person. I don't want to outright call Kamala Harris a communist unless she says things that are effectively espousing communist ideas and communist beliefs. I'm going to play you this clip and we will discuss on the other side. Watch this from Commie la Harris.
Supposed so-called extreme leaders are suggesting it's a bad thing to care about and pay attention to inequities, to say DEI is a bad thing, when in fact, if we want fair outcomes, we must understand what are disparities and then accommodate and adjust for those disparities if we want equal outcomes. So environmental justice raises those points, right? Equitable outcomes. Is everyone coming out the same way? Well, if you don't start on the same base, everybody can have an equal amount. You're still not going to end up on the same base, right? If we want equal outcomes, we need to take into account not everybody starts out on the same base, and we have to make adjustments.
Is she saying that out loud? Does she know what that means? That's the thing that I think is most fascinating about this. I don't actually know if she knows what she's saying. The whole idea that politicians use these fluffy words and these good sounding, nice sounding things that help people, like equal and outcomes and synergy and all of the fancy words that politicians use, do they know what that means? Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States, is advocating for equal outcomes. I am all about equal opportunity. And that, even, you're never going to get equal opportunity in a free society simply because, I don't know, people have varying advantages. Because my parents were married, I had an advantage over somebody with the same financial ability, with the same brain power, but came from a divorced home or a single parent home. There's no way to ensure equality at the start. And there's definitely no way, because you have people making conscious decisions, you have a ton of different variables that factor into someone's life. There's no way that you can actually have equal outcomes. Now, I've said this constantly. I think people don't quite understand. This is the question I have in my head. Is Kamala Harris evil or dumb? Because maybe you can be somewhat of both. But when you're espousing ideas about equal outcome. You are either evil and a potential communist dictator, because that's not possible except under communism. Under communism, everyone would be equal and miserable and poor. Or you're dumb and you use the words that a lot of your actually evil college professors that are pushing more communist and socialist ideals are using, like the term equity. I've said this often enough. Equity and equality are not the same thing. We should all be aware of that. Equality, meaning the equal amount of opportunity. I am all for pushing for as much of that as we can feasibly get without interfering on people's lives. Equality, great. Treat everybody as an equal individual in this country. Equity means the equal outcome, where everybody will end up the same. If I work my butt off, and if you work your butt off, and your next door neighbor sits on his butt all day and does nothing, there's no way that we should have equal anything, let alone equal financial outcomes. That's insane. And also, if I worked my butt off and my neighbor worked his butt off, if I worked my butt off and my neighbor did nothing, and we both have equal outcomes, I'm no longer going to work my butt off. That is as simple as it gets. And yet Kamala Harris is sitting here on a stage with a microphone and cameras turned on saying that we need to fight for equal outcomes. That is insane. Literally insane. There's a reason the whole Rich Men North of Richmond song got so big. What's the line in it? Oh shoot! Now it's stuck in my head and I can't get the specific line. But it's talking about you can't sit on welfare the whole time. The bag of fudge rounds. Taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Yeah. Geez, lost my train of thought there. Anyways, there's a reason why that song is so popular, because it tells the story of most Americans who work hard and don't want to see their money going towards other people in order to achieve, like Kamala Harris said, an equal outcome, which is not possible in any way, shape, or form. Geez, but I jabbered on way long about that and kind of burying the lead here. I feel like, whoops. But got to get to this. Hunter Biden was indicted yesterday. Hunter Biden was indicted yesterday on 3 felony gun charges by a federal grand jury. And as you can see in the chyron, if you're watching this, if you're listening, sorry you can't see it, but who cares? I don't actually care. I don't actually care about this one. I saw a tweet that was kind of, I think, in the same line of thinking as me, that he got indicted on literally the only thing that can't possibly incriminate Joe Biden. In which case, who cares? This is not news to me. I don't care about this in any way, shape, or form because I don't actually care about Hunter Biden. And I feel like a lot of lefties try to hit conservatives or right-leaning people or Republicans, whatever you want to call them. I feel like they try to use the Hunter Biden thing as, well, Hunter Biden's not running for president. I know. I am aware. Well, Hunter Biden, you could look at his lifestyle and he's not the one you're voting for. I'm aware. The only reason that I'm interested in Hunter Biden is the massive amounts of evidence that shows that Joe Biden was probably connected to him. And I don't know if you know this, Joe Biden is the president of the United States. So when people are like, Hunter Biden finally got indicted. Yeah, but it's a thing that I don't care about. This is a private citizen who got indicted on a charge. And I saw an argument saying, I don't appreciate Hunter Biden's indictment because I don't think the law that he's being indicted under is a constitutional law. And that's a whole argument in and of itself. But the fact that Hunter Biden, being the president's son, is indicted on a gun charge that has nothing to do with Joe Biden, I do not care at all. I don't know. Nevertheless, I decided to bring this clip up from Meet the Press. Donald Trump is going to be on Meet the Press. They've got a brand new host, and I forget her name, but he's going to be on the first episode of Meet the Press as what's-her-name takes over. And just as they were doing their interview, this news breaks, and she asked Donald Trump about this, and I kind of liked his answer. I wish he would have gone further, But I'm going to play this clip for you, and we will discuss on the other side. Check it out.
Let's talk about the breaking news today. We learned just a short time ago that the president's son, Hunter Biden, was indicted by a federal grand jury on 3 gun charges. Given that, Mr. President, can you continue to say that there are 2 systems of justice?
Well, I think there's no question about it. He had a plea deal that was the deal of the century, the art of the deal. You could write a book on it, the art of the deal. And all of a sudden that was broken up by a judge who was able to, a brilliant judge actually, who was able to see through what was happening. And it's a sad situation. I mean, nobody should be happy about this. I'm not happy about it. Nobody is. It's a very sad thing. It's so bad for our country. But, you know, if you think about it, I've been under investigation from the day I came down the escalator, and a phony investigation, fake investigations, investigations that I beat every single time, still under investigations. But it's a very sad thing, and it's a slippery slope, and dangerous, very dangerous for our country.
Yeah, I kind of liked that answer, because I think he got halfway there. I liked that he brought up the plea deal. Because the argument that she's making, oh, and by the way, you guys are so good at knowing things. Kristen Welker, Marcella says, yeah, that's her name. That's the name of the new host of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. It's finally over. Chuck Todd said he was going to be done after summer, and he's now gone. Anyways, she's making the point. She's trying to make the point of like, hey, look, you know, you're saying we have a 2 separate justice system for varying individuals depending on how they lean politically. But look, Hunter Biden got indicted. And Trump effectively is saying, yeah, but he got indicted after one judge saw the crazy-ass plea deal that you guys gave him. I'm getting here indicted for a paperwork issue in Manhattan, a documents case in Florida, which that, again, he actually might get in trouble for that. And then 2 just nowhere indictments on January 6th and challenging the election. And he's trying to make the point of like, look at the plea deal that you get. Like, yes, you still can say that there are 2 different justice systems for the different types of people in this country, again, depending on their political leaning. She's trying to make the case of, well, look, Hunter Biden got indicted for this gun charge. So, yeah, obviously the system's fair because he might have done something wrong. And you got indicted, he got indicted. So, yeah, it's a fair system. What I wish he would have made the point is what I've been saying earlier, is that, hold on, he got indicted on the only possible thing in the litany of Hunter Biden misgivings that Joe Biden isn't a part of. Yeah, that makes you think there's a 2-tiered system. Unless, of course, they ultimately then come out with a, hey, we're going to look into this other stuff as criminal activity, rather than just an impeachment inquiry, because impeachment is a political process. But unless they say, hey, we're going to look into this as an actual criminal act between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, then yeah, we're going to continue to think it's a 2-tiered system. But anyways, that's the new Hunter Biden update. He got indicted yesterday, and I don't care, because that's the only thing that doesn't matter. I want to move on to this. I want to move on to this because we're going to have, I don't know, go on to the weekend in fun. I thought this was a hilarious tweet. We'll have some fun with this before we go out. And I don't think we'll get to the trans parents. Maybe we'll get that down on Monday. It's too long of a video, and I want to make sure we give it full shrift. And I do want to get to this. I saw this tweet/Twitter thread and thought it was fantastic. And ultimately, you know, you might not be excited about this. You might not be happy about this, because when I read this, it's going to turn out that a lot of you people are bigots. Yeah, you. Stephanie Wynn at Some Therapist tweeted yesterday. Was this yesterday? Tweeted yesterday. We identified some signs that your child might be a mermaid, and discussed why mermaid affirming care is essential. If your child is a mermaid, one important step along her journey is to become her true self is leg binding. Is your child a mermaid? Are they showing signs that they may be mermaid-like or mermaid-kin or just a flat-out mermaid? And if so, if your child is in fact a mermaid and you are not participating in mermaid-affirming care, you're a bigot. Now, some of you might be confused. Some of you might just be learning about mermaid-affirming care, which is why this tweet is important. It talks about leg binding. Leg binding is one of the best and most important steps in their journey to becoming an actual mermaid. See, she's not just going to have those clunky, ungraceful land legs forever. And the very appearance of them causes her species dysphoria, reminding her of how sad she is that she hasn't fully transformed into her true mermaid self, Stephanie writes. If unaffirmed, species dysphoria can even lead to suicide. Do you want your kid to commit suicide because you don't affirm their species dysphoria? This is serious, America. If your child is a mermaid and you're not affirming that, there's something wrong with you. She goes on, you can reduce her distress. And you know what? I'll just throw this out there. I don't like the fact that she's using gendered language here. I'll continue reading it as it's written because I don't want to misquote or mischaracterize what this individual is saying. But I don't like the fact that she's using specifically gendered language to say apparently that only women, females, with female identifiers can also identify as mermaids. I don't like that, but I'll keep reading. You can reduce her stress and help her practice for life with one tail instead of two legs by binding her legs together for 8 to 16 hours per day. Again, if you're not doing this, you're a bigot. Doctors agree the benefits outweigh the risks. Affirm your child's mermaid identity today and get her some binding ropes. If you don't, there are some charitable nonprofits that will happily send you binding ropes behind your backs, discreetly at no cost, and her teachers will be happy to let her bind herself in the closet so she can live life as her true self at school. So there's really no point in holding back and trying to stop her. Hop on board the mermaid affirmation today. Again, like I said, there's no way around this. If your kid identifies as a mermaid, no matter what gender your kid is, again, I don't like that gendered language is being used there. But if your kid identifies as a mermaid and you're not binding their legs, you're a bad person. You're a bad American. You're a bad parent. You're awful. I would even go a step further. All right, I can't. I broke character there because I've in my head was thinking that's not a good idea to pretend to seriously suggest. What I was going to say is you should bind their legs and throw them in the pool. Don't do that. And I didn't want to seriously, sarcastically say that at the risk of some crazy person bringing this up. Hey, I binded my kid's legs and chucked him in the pool, just like the comedian said. She drowned. Yeah, don't do that. But that is the next step, logically, if your kid is an actual mermaid. There's so many other affirming things to do to affirm a kid's gender self as a mermaid, a species self as a mermaid, like cutting gills into the ribs. Don't do any of these things. All right, I can't do it. I couldn't hold it together the entire time. But what a hilarious mockery of a... I don't really see the difference. You want to talk about kids being the different gender? Jeez. Non-binary. Yeah. Stuff is wild. So, anyways, that... Okay, so this is what I was worried about. All right, there's several of you in the comment section saying, doctors agree, my ass, question mark. This wasn't serious. None of the last 7 minutes of this was serious. It's just a very snarky, but also pretty interestingly telling example of the whole gender bending madness that's going on in this country. This was a joke, by the way. The person tweeting this was kidding. This is specifically to point out how crazy some people have gotten in this country. I didn't think I needed to say that, but judging by the comments, yeah, this is not serious. There's one other comment that I wanted to get here that I read that I thought was hilarious. This is apropos of completely nothing, but since it's Friday and since it's the last couple of minutes here, I want to read it just because it's funny. Out of nowhere, Ryan on YouTube comments, you see the clip of the two naked homeless guys in Portland fighting each other? I don't know. I read that when we played one of the Joe Biden clips and just started laughing. No, I haven't seen that. Send it along, but I don't know. Just funny out of the blue. We're talking about Joe Biden races. Hey, you see the two naked guys in Portland fighting? I didn't, but sure, send it. Speaking of send it, I will send you all into the weekend on a happy, fun note. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you have a second or you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media accounts. Just type in JOBOB, you'll be able to find me pretty much anywhere. The Star Spangled Banter comedy tour is on the road. Our first show is a week from tomorrow in Fallbrook, California. Tickets are, I would say, going fast, but they're like almost gone. So if you do want to catch that show, you can go to any of the social media links and you can click one of the links. We'll also be in Arkansas, Tulsa, either Nashville or Miami. I can't decide, but that one's like a Wednesday. I don't know. First person to tell me where to go on this like off Wednesday that I have in between the Turning Point tour and booking my own shows. It's Wednesday, October 11th. I don't know where should I go that day. I'm on the East Coast. I don't want to fly all the way back to California. I don't know why I'm telling you all of this, but yeah, we're either looking at Nashville or Miami, and I can't decide which one. So that's also Twin Falls, Idaho, and then the Turning Point tour is also going to be on any of my social media accounts. So appreciate you doing that. Also appreciate you sticking around, tuning in this entire week. Have a great weekend. Turn off the news for a little bit. Do yourself a favor and I don't know, have fun. Do some fun stuff as opposed to get mired down in the muck of politics through your entire weekend. But we will see you Monday, probably. Same time, same place. God bless America.